I've been a fan of Pokemon since I was a kid, and I've always kind of dreamed of making my own Pokemon game, and this is the beginning of one. In this video, I'll show you how I used Inkscape to create the art for this 3rd generation inspired Pokemon-style game. Then I'll show you how I made the animations in Blender and how I brought everything together into Godot. So far, I've only built the starting town, there is no combat, no interiors, and just a few Pokemon, but I'd really like to keep developing this into a proper demo that I can release as I download. So if that sounds interesting to you, let me know with a like, a comment, and maybe a subscription. Okay, let's get started. First of all, every Pokemon game is based on a real-world inspired region. Kanto is based on Japan, Kalos is based on France, Galar is based on England, and so on. I knew I didn't want to just make a generic HD version of 3rd generation graphics. I wanted to feel like a new region, so I decided to go with something inspired by Scandinavia. Mainly because I really like those Nordic wooden houses and I thought it would be fun to design roads filled with mountains and natural landscapes. Since I was starting with a town, I gathered references from small Nordic villages, along with classic Pokemon starting towns. I quickly put together a mockup using the proportions from the 3rd generation games, but I soon realized I needed to be a bit more flexible. Those proportions don't translate perfectly to HD vector art. At first, I struggled to find the right visual style. That's when I started looking at other games, like Mother 3, which helped a lot in defining the direction. You'll notice some similarities in the use of color, and especially in the combination of black outlines with colored lines. The first thing I worked on was the houses. I wanted them to feel like traditional Nordic wooden houses, like the ones in this reference. Anyway, here are the houses. Of course, the red one is the player's house and the blue one is the rival's. For the Pokemon lab, I went with a simpler design. At first it didn't really feel like a lab, so I added this logo which kinda makes it look more like a gym, but for now I'm happy with it. I'll probably redo it later. Then I made some smaller environmental elements. I started with this stone road inspired by Pewter City. In many references, the entire town used this kind of surface instead of grass, but I changed it a bit because it felt wrong for a starting town not to have houses on grass. Then I added more man-made elements, benches, lights, trash cans, and some foliage to bring everything together, including trees to define the playable area. And with that, I could finally start building the town layout. I even added a small lake where you could eventually use surf. Even now the town feels a bit large compared to traditional starting towns, which usually only have 4 houses. I might later turn this into the first main town with a gym and design a smaller starting town separately, but we'll see. But there is something missing: the characters. I quickly realized that strictly following 3rd generation proportions wasn't going to work in HD, so instead I kept the general idea, big heads with really small bodies, but I adjusted the proportions to make them more readable. For the main character, I wanted something inspired by the originals, with the red jacket and the red and white hat, and this is what I came up with. Then of course we need a rival. A similar design, a blue tone and a slightly different attitude. He's gonna be a bad rival, not a nice one. Same proportions but wearing the hat forwards. I also wanted a few adult NPCs, so I gave them slightly more realistic proportions, but only slightly. He is the fisherman. I'm not completely happy with him yet, especially the proportions, but it works for now. And since this is a Scandinavian region, and statistically like 50% of the people have a metal band, we obviously need a metal head. I also placed a few NPCs sitting on benches, and they look way too big, and now I understand why benches in these games are usually decorative. They don't interact well with the characters' proportions. Still, it looks kinda cute with the NPCs sitting on giant benches, so I decided to keep it. At this point, the basic map is done, but to better visualize a possible expansion, that depends on you, like, comment and subscribe for a possible part 2 and more, I wanted to design 3 starting Pokémon and a professor. They won't be in this demo yet, but they could be part of a future version. Now, I'll be honest, I've never really drawn monsters of animals before, so they probably are gonna suck. So, I started by gathering references. First, existing starter Pokémons, then Nordic animals, and because Pokémon takes a lot of mythology, a few mythological creatures. However, most mythological references didn't feel particularly Nordic visually. Giant dogs, big snakes, 8-legged horses, so I decided to base the designs on real animals from the region instead, with one exception. For the fire starter, I chose the Eurasian lynx, partly because my favorite animals are cats and my favorite type is fire. This animal also has that unique fur that makes the face look quite unique, and this is what I came up with. The shapes on the sides are meant to be fire, they'll be animated later. Similar to Ponyta that has that fire hair, which I always thought was an incredibly cool concept as a kid. Anyway, because I'm not good with names, I called it Pinks. For the water starter, I went with a narwhal. Narwhals already look bizarre. Like platypus, they feel like real-life monsters, so I made a stylized version. This one doesn't have that fire element that makes it look monster-like, but I gave it an extra pair of legs to stand on the ground and I think it works. I called it Warwi. Again, naming is not really my strength. For the grass type, I finally found a mythological reference I liked, the Nordic Yule goat. It's basically a goat wrapped in decorative ribbons, so I adapted the idea and added a leaf-based mane to give it a grass feel. I called it Goli. For real, please, if you have better name suggestions, let me know in the comments. I know these names suck. And here's the trio. I'm not completely satisfied with them yet. I think they are okay as more generic Pokemon, but for starters, I think they need another pass. In any case, for now, they'll do. Now, since most Pokemon games start with a professor introducing the world and showing off one Pokemon from that region, I wanted to include one too. This one was pretty straightforward as a design, an older man with a long Viking style beard and a lab coat, with a few Nordic inspired details. And this is the professor for the region, Professor Ron. Before moving on to animation, if you'd like to learn how to create this kind of art, I have a bundle of 13 full courses on Inkscape illustration, covering character design, background design, game art and more. I also recently added a 30-day program to help you go through all the 70 hours of content as a structured bootcamp. Link in the description. Every purchase helps support the channel and more free tutorials. Now with all the art done, it's time for animation. For now I'm focusing on the main character, plus a few environmental elements. I'll expand this later with NPC movement and more. I don't care for super smooth animation. I want to stay true to the 3rd generation style, so I start by drawing the frames in Inkscape and then refine them in Blender once I can see them in motion. For the walk cycle, I use only 4 frames, similar to the original games. That's enough. And if needed, I can always use interpolate sequence in Blender to generate more frames. So I just move the legs and arms slightly, adjusting the shapes and order as needed. Later in Blender I'll refine things like head movement and add in some secondary motion. Once the frames are done, I bring everything into Blender. Here I can preview the animation and tweak it. As you can see, it needs some adjustments to feel like a proper walk cycle. The good thing is that, since this is frame by frame, I can modify each frame directly without worrying about interpolation. I added a subtle side-to-side movement, and now it feels much better. After a few quick animations for things like flowers, everything is ready to export to Godot. There's not much to say about this part. I imported everything to Godot and rebuilt it down with the proper collisions and everything. The movement code was super simple. What was interesting was testing an add-on called Dialog Box, which handles RPG-style dialogue. After setting it up, I added some basic interactions and wrote a few lines of dialogue. That's when I realized that in Pokemon games, characters turn their heads when talking to you. So I went back into Inkscape and created a few quick alternate head versions depending on the direction from where you interact with them. And that's it. Here is the full gameplay of what I have so far. Like I said earlier, I'd love to expand this demo, add interiors, battles, new towns, random encounters, and more Pokemon. But for that I need your feedback. So like and comment if you would like to see me expand this demo. And if we go to a point that's playable, I'll make the demo downloadable. Also, don't forget to check out the course bundle if you want to learn Inkscape for illustration and game art. It's the best way to support the channel too. Enjoy the rest of the gameplay. Bye!